Hi everyone. Welcome to the Growing Garlic live Q&A. I'm going to be going live with Mary from Peaceful Valley. So let me get her on the live real quick. Let's see when she's joined. So Peaceful Valley is out of California and Mary is the nursery manager there. Hi Mary.
Hi.
And they also have their website online, which is groworganic.com. I've ordered lots of things from them in the past, usually seed starting supplies, any kind of gardening gear, fruit trees, like all of our fruit trees are from them as well. But this year I'm growing garlic and I've already pre-ordered my garlic from them. So I thought it would be a really fun idea to do a live Q&A where we answer basic questions about growing garlic and then of course the specific questions that you guys had from the Tiny Green Growers community. If you have any questions that don't get answered in the live, feel free to shoot us a DM or go to their website. It's groworganic.com. They have tons of blogs, articles, PDFs, you name it, they have it. So with that being said, should we get started, Mary?
Sure.
So first and foremost, the two types of garlic, hard neck, soft neck. What can you tell us the difference there?
Yeah, so soft necks are typically the variety that you see in those lovely garlic braids. They do not put on a big flower stalk. That's the hard necks. They put on a flower stalk that's called a scape, and you cut those off and they're delicious. But that's the main visual difference. You're going to get bigger cloves usually out of the hard necks. Soft necks are going to store longer, but it's that flower stalk in the middle
That makes the
that,
difference.
that makes it.
Gotcha. So pretty easy. The hard necks, they've got the scapes that are delicious. I'm so excited to try those. Soft necks, like you said, the skinnier, softer necks, better for storage. So we've got the two types. What are the ideal climates for each?
Typically, it is hard necks for the north, where it's colder winters, and soft necks for the south, where you have more mild winters. Um, so that means that your hard necks are very cold hardy. If you're in a very cold winter zone, you're growing hard necks. And if you have nice mild winters, it's a soft neck.
Is there any space for overlap there, or is it just a hard and fast rule where, the north grows the cold hardy and the south goes with the soft neck?
There's always a fuzzy middle where you can kind of get away with it either way. And I personally always practice zonal denial, where I try to grow stuff where it doesn't necessarily intend to grow. So yes, right in the middle, you can get away with it. The hard necks, sometimes if you're in a warmer climate, they just need a little more maybe refrigeration because they need that cold period before you plant them.
Got it, to kind of mimic those northern climates with the
Yep.
really chilly. So throw it in your freezer or fridge for a little bit before. Yeah. I simulate those cold northern winters. I'm not jealous of those. Been there before, and it's brutal.
Yeah.
So Virginia, Zone 7A, Richmond, we're in kind of that transitional zone. So
You can do either one.
yeah, so I'm excited to try them both and see what works best here. We also have these little microclimates in our front yard versus our backyard garden. So just experimenting to see what grows best where. I'm really excited to try it. Um, but that's good. I feel like a lot of things in gardening aren't like a hard and fast rule, which is we all kind of just live in the gray zone.
That's right. Exactly.
Uh, so soft neck for long-term storage, hard neck can also be stored, but for a shorter time period. Is that right?
Shorter time periods, yes. Yeah.
And then where can I grow all of these garlics? Should I grow them in the ground? Should I do a raised bed? Could I do it in grow bags?
You could do it in all those things. You can do it in whatever space you have. If you only have a porch, you can grow them in containers. You can grow them in the ground and have fields of garlic to look out over in the winter. or just a little couple of grow bags. You can use whatever you have on hand as long as it has drainage holes. You want to make sure it has good drainage. Garlic doesn't like to sit in soppy, wet soil.
Gotcha. No wet feet like the citrus. So some of those smart pots that wick away the extra moisture
Smart
too.
pots are great. I've done them in smart pots. I've done them in small as 1 gallon containers. It'll grow. I mean, garlic is a great thing to start with, and it's kind of the gateway thing to year-round gardening. It'll get you going. You'll be
Going
hooked.
perfect. So for gardeners, if you don't have a fall garden planned, garlic.
Put in some garlic.
But you'll be committed to this space until about like July when we pull
You
it.
will be committed to that space. You do have to remember that. Yes.
So we're growing it to July in most areas, right? When should we put it in the ground?
Ideally October. You could do September. You could push it to the end of October, maybe fudge it into November if you're in a milder climate. October is that's what you're aiming for.
Best bet. So by Halloween, preferably.
Yes.
Easy enough. And then we talked about the garlic not having wet feet. Is there anything else, like amendment-wise, that garlic prefers in the soil?
Garlic likes good drainage. It doesn't like hard compacted soil. So if you have clay, you're going to add compost. You're going to mix that in, loosen it up. If you have sandy soil, I would also add compost because that's going to help increase the organic matter in your soil. If you have sandy soil, the water goes right away. So add some more compost. It helps retain the moisture. Clay, it helps break it up and loosen it up, because if you have this hard compacted soil, garlic's not going to want to grow very big.
I feel like that's in Richmond, like we have so much of the hard clay soil. So no matter where we're planting in ground, that's why we have raised beds here. It's just, unless you're constantly amending, it's to get through for most plants. Especially, I feel like garlic wants to form pretty bulbs, like let it be.
Yes.
We talked about soil. What about fertilizing? What should I fertilize with? When? Is there like a frequency that you guys suggest?
I would, at planting time, add some sort of phosphorus to the hole or the trench where you're planting your cloves. Phosphorus, it could be bone meal, it could be soft rock phosphate. Something in the hole at planting time gives it a good start, because you're after that bulb forming, and that's the food to help that bulb form over winter. Come springtime, when you start to see growth in everything, that's when you can side dress with an all-purpose fertilizer and do all your weeding, because you'll be doing that.
It doesn't like weeds either, from what
it's not like competition from other growing things that are not what you want, which is what a weed would be.
Okay, so we'll feed it at the start, side dress it as we go along, and make sure that guy is fed and healthy. Perfect. Yes. Weed free. If I plant a pound of garlic, how much should I expect in return?
Typically, you're going to get about 10 pounds out of 1 pound of garlic. 10 to 12. I mean, you may get a little more, you may get a little less, but average is about 10 to 12.
That's a pretty decent amount of garlic to have.
Oh, yeah, but it'll go fast. You'll eat it. It's great.
You should see the garlic situation in our house. It's just like, oh, this recipe calls for 2 cloves. Let's throw in 6. Like,
yeah.
That's normal, right? So if I'm at the grocery store and I see like this lovely head of garlic, so many pretty bulbs, what would stop me from getting that and throwing that in the ground? Why should I order online when I've got access to it here at my stores and I don't have to pay for shipping?
Well, you can plant that garlic. You just may not get the results that you're after. Garlic, seed garlic is certified free of nematodes and other pests. It does not have any growth inhibitors on it that's going to stop it from sprouting. And if you are at the grocery store and it's organic garlic and it's a beautiful looking head of garlic, it's most likely a soft neck. So if that's what you're after, there is nothing stopping you except the fact that seed garlic is certified free of pests. And that's pretty important. You don't want to introduce things like nematodes to your soil.
Right. I can't imagine what that would do to everything else in the garden when you literally focus on keeping the soil so healthy. But then also, I guess, if you're in the northern climate and you just find a pretty bulb of softneck garlic at the store,
Right.
might not even be ideal. So,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
the whole treated with stuff, I don't know how I'd feel about that going dry. So seed garlic is. Before I plant, you said put phosphorus down. Is there anything else that I should sprinkle in there before planting or be aware of that wouldn't get along with garlic?
That wouldn't get along with garlic? I would give the garlic its own space. I typically only, if I'm planting a trench of garlic, it's just going to be the garlic. I'm always going to put the phosphorus in the hole, and I tuck it in with a layer of straw in my own garden. You could use whatever mulch you prefer, but it helps protect it over winter, tuck it in, and helps keep those weeds away that doesn't like to grow with.
Keep it nice and cozy. Little garlic blanket. I love it. And then some of the questions that I got from the Tiny Green Growers community, one of the overwhelming questions that kept coming in was, how do I grow the biggest bulbs of garlic possible?
The biggest bulbs of garlic come from the biggest cloves of garlic. So when you have that bulb, peel off the cloves. The biggest clove is going to make that biggest bulb. And the little small ones can stay in the kitchen.
Little taste test before you put it in ground. Make sure you like what you're planting, right? And
Exactly.
then let's see. How should I manage underground pests? A few people said that they had red insects that actually went into the cloves. A lot of people are having issues with squirrels, especially as suburban gardeners who like densely wooded areas where squirrels are just everywhere. How should we protect our garlic?
Well, for underground pests, I think more of like gophers. I would use a gopher basket or gopher wire in the trench, or the best way, of course, if you have a big gopher problem, is to grow in containers. You may just need to go into containers to keep them from eating your garlic. Little insect pests, that's harder to pin down. We'd have to know what little kind of pests we're talking about. Clean soil, of course, you just need to start with clean soil, especially if it's in a container. Start with clean, fresh potting soil that's well drained. The overhead attacks, those are a little more fun and challenging. You can take larger gopher baskets and open them up and put them over the top of your plant. I've seen some people do some serious Fort Knox trying to keep squirrels out.
I mean, they're a serious problem. I get it.
Yeah. So it's harder for those squirrels to keep them out, but sometimes making a cage and putting it over your garlic, sometimes that's the way to go if the onslaught is a little too intense.
Yeah, I'm thinking in the past we've done, it's kind of like the cattle panel fencing over top of some of our raised beds to protect from squirrels digging in, pulling up seeds that we've direct sown. So maybe something like that you could pull off too. I know for some of our garlic, we're going to be planting it kind of permaculture style around our apple trees and fruit trees. So we'll have to get creative there because we have a lot of deer that come through. Although I've read that it's pretty deer resistant, but our deer are pretty hungry here in the burbs, so I'm not taking my chances.
Yeah, they usually leave it alone, but not always. And going permaculture style is great. Um, the more you plant, the more you're trying to make it like a wild area that takes care of itself. So
Mhm.
I put garlic everywhere. It's if there's an empty space, it could be garlic.
I love that. Making the best use of your space possible. And
Exactly.
something, who doesn't love,
Who doesn't?
I don't know, that would, vampires maybe, but like, I don't know a single person who's like, you know what, I don't like garlic. It's not for me. It's strange. What happens if you plant your garlic too early? What if we get it in the mail and it's August or too early in September? What happens then?
If you get it in September and it's not ready for your area, you could keep it in a cool spot for a little bit longer until you're ready to plant, or you can plant things. It'll start to grow. The soil is still warm usually. It'll start to grow. I usually put, like I said, a thick layer of straw over things. I've had garlic start growing and then it snowed. The garlic didn't really seem to care. Um, Not everybody's going to be in that same situation, but um, it once it's in the ground, it's insulated. If it starts to grow a little bit, it may then stop growing when the cold hits, and then it'll start back up again in the spring.
And then for our hardneck varieties that put out those scapes, if they put out scapes super early in the winter, is that something to be concerned about? Totally normal? Just clip them when you see them?
Sometimes it does happen, and I would clip them when you see them. They start coming up and they start curling around, and you just chop those off, and you get some butter, and you get a frying pan, and you fry them up, and they're awesome.
Oh, I can't wait to try that. That's going to be delicious. I'm going to put it on everything. Um, and then I know we'll be talking about this later when it is harvesting time because that's so much farther down the road than when you go to plant. It's not like this instant. You plant it and then you get garlic. How do people know when to harvest garlic? Are there any telltale signs or are we just kind of checking?
Well, the hardnecks will put on that scape typically, and you're going to cut that off and let it keep growing. But some of those leaves will start to turn yellow
Okay.
and start to die back. Um, Usually you see those signs and you back off on the watering and you give it a couple weeks and then you harvest. But it's not always cut and dried. Sometimes you're waiting and it's the leaves aren't yellowing, and that's when you just got to sacrifice one and dig it up and see what's going on. Or you can, take the soil away from the shoulders, see how big it is. Is it big enough? Is that the size you want?
Yeah.
But I almost always take some test garlic to see if it's at the size that I want it to be. And if it is, no more water for you. You're going to get harvested soon.
You're done. So
You're done.
going off of watering, how frequently should we be watering during the year? I know you said once it's ready to harvest, kind of pull back in the last couple of weeks. Is there a recommended amount of watering during regular growing season?
It's going to depend on your climate. If you're in a place that gets rain, who gets rain all the time? We don't. We don't get rain all the time.
It used to
Um,
be happening here anymore.
yeah. So if you're planting in October, hopefully those winter rains have started. The winter is going to take care of it. That's why it's such a nice, easy crop, because the winter rains are taking care of your crop. You're not out there watering with a hose all the time. Come springtime, for us at least, it stops raining way too early and you have to start irrigating. You'll have to check your soil to see, but if most garlic at that point, it may only need it once a week, it may need it twice a week, it may need 3 times, but it's going to depend a lot on your conditions, your soil, how well it drains, and your climate.
So again, that gray area of like no hard and fast for everyone. You just have to check on it, make sure it's happy and healthy. And
Exactly.
it's
And if you're growing in a container, you're going to need to water it more often.
so true. That's part of the reason why we're just not going to try it out in a container. I know you can, but the amount of stuff we already water, adding so much garlic in a pot, to me, a smart pot, whatever the type of pot, even if it retains a little moisture, just it's a lot.
Right.
uh, is there a trick to get the one clove to separate into the big bulb? Some of our people in our community have planted one clove of garlic, and then that was it, and it just had the one clove.
It could be a phosphorus issue. If there's too much nitrogen in the soil, you're just going to get green leafy growth, and you're not going to get a big bulb. If you only had one stalk come out of that one clove and nothing else form around, I would look at the soil and see, and timing and climate and variety. There's a lot of places to go.
Anything really. Okay.
But it's usually nutrients, though. That's usually the first place to look.
It's a pretty hungry eater from what I've gathered. Needs a lot of stuff.
It's trying to store up all that energy over winter, because that's what you're after. You're after that bulb. That's where it's storing all the energy. So it needs that nutrient to do that.
That makes sense. Somebody asked, is it similar to growing shallots?
Yes and no. Shallots, they're not going to get planted as deeply as garlic. Shallots, you're going to get them, they're going to have this little papery bit at the tip of the shallot. That's going to stick out of the ground. Whereas garlic, you're taking that clove and it's going down in the ground about the same height that the garlic clove is. So shallots stick up, they form more on the top.
Okay. So the depth of planting, otherwise we're sticking a bulb in the ground, probably feeding it the same with shallots.
Yeah.
Okay. So just the depth there. And I think that answers that question. Let's see if I had any other ones. No, I think we got those. I'm going to go into the comments and look, just seeing the last one that came in. What form of phosphorus do you feed your garlic? Do you have any recommendations? I know you said the bone meal. Is there anything that you guys prefer to use?
My personal favorite is soft rock phosphate. It's I use it for anything that is a bulb. I use it when I'm planting onions. I use it for the garlic. I use it for the shallots, and I use it on trees when I'm planting trees. It's just kind of the all-around easy and cheap. You can use bone meal. That's totally acceptable and also readily available. Most places have bone meal. Yeah, those are probably the two that I go to, but I get myself a big 50-pound bag of Calphos, and that's what I use all year.
One bag and done for that nutrient.
Exactly.
All right. Are we too hot in Sacramento Valley to grow most of these varieties?
I would mostly do soft necks in Sacramento, but I would also throw in some hard necks, and just because they're delicious and you're not going to find them in the grocery store necessarily. Hard necks, it's just hard to beat, so why not try it? I've grown hard necks in the valley before and gotten away with it. It's totally doable.
That gray area again. All right, let me scroll all the way to the bottom. I think that is it. If anybody has any questions, though, go ahead and put them in the comment section. Oh, more just came in. Do you start shallots in the fall, too?
The shallots? Yeah, shallots will also be available. The combo pack that we sell is a great way to try everything. It's got soft necks, it's got hard necks, it's got shallots, it's got elephant garlic. It's got all of those to try out.
Like, oh, I need to some stuff now. Uh, Planting in Arizona, should I still start planting in October?
I would probably still aim for October. The best way to find out is to check with your local ag extension or your local master gardeners to find out for your specific area when you typically plant that crop. We can certainly advise you, but I'm a Californian. I've lived in California my whole life, so I don't know Arizona really well. So I usually start looking for university extension office information when I'm trying to advise someone on different states.
Yeah, definitely. And then I feel like Arizona has a bunch of different climates, really like any other state where you've got
Yes.
the desert, which I mean, it's so hot and then so cold all in one day. You have to have your entire wardrobe out all year round.
Right.
I think this might be a sarcastic question. Will garlic keep bats out of my yard? I'm assuming like vampire bats.
I don't think so, but you want the bats around.
It's not the vampire ones. Like, will be cool
Yeah.
if fly on over. Would it be okay to plant in a shady spot? Sunlight will reach it later during spring. So maybe in the winter they've got the lower sun going on and something's getting shaded. What do you think on that one?
It's worth a try. I mean, you're aiming for a full day of sun for the garlic. But if you know your yard and you've paid attention to where the sun goes and where it is in the winter versus where it is in the spring and summer, if you have enough hours, you can probably get away with it. I mean, you're looking at, you want 6 hours-ish average of full sun. So if that's what you're getting, 6 to 8 hours. I try to aim for that. I don't always get it in my own yard. So I've also done this. It does work. Area.
What if you're in like a full sun all day long spot? Will that be okay? Will that be too much sun?
It won't be too much sun because you're going to use some mulch. You're going to keep mulch around there to help retain that moisture in the soil so it doesn't dry out so quickly. So yeah, you can do it.
Perfect. And then what about here in New Jersey? It's been very wet here recently. So probably same answer on that one. Check.
Check your soil and make sure you have drainage where you're putting it. If you don't have good drainage, then you might need to think about raising it up and putting it in more of a raised bed situation. And, raised beds don't have to be anything fancy. You can use whatever materials you have around to just hold that soil up. I've even had raised beds with no sides. It was just kind of a mound.
There you go.
Years after a while, but
And then let's see. 2 people are asking about the variety pack. They don't see it online. Is it the Down to Earth kit? Yeah, right.
I'm not sure. The combo pack usually will be available once we know what's going to go in it.
So TBD, wait, check back. I think there's a way to like set up notifications.
Yeah.
I've definitely a fair amount of those here recently that I am constantly setting up. What tools should you use to clean cured garlic?
I use my hands and a pair of gloves. I usually pop them out of the ground. I will leave them in a shady, cool spot. So, whether that's a basement or a garage or a carport, somewhere out of the direct sun. I've even laid them out underneath the trees just so it has shade. Let them dry off. That soil will be a lot easier to knock off once it's dry. That's another reason to stop watering them. I don't really have any special tools other than these. And I usually trim off the roots once they're dry too.
Gardener's best tool is their hand.
Exactly.
I've also seen some articles online that you don't want to like dig too hard near them with a spade or anything, so you don't puncture the garlic bulbs too. So I think hands are like a super gentle something just to pull them up.
If your ground is a little too tough for just pulling them right out of the ground, I would say a digging fork over anything. That's kind of my favorite all-around tool.
More questions. At the end of the season, I put the garlic and vinegar to store in the fridge. How long will that stay good? I bought a lot more than I realized I was buying last time. Can I plant the ones I put in vinegar, or should I just keep eating it?
I would keep eating it. I don't know how long it's gonna keep in vinegar. I honestly usually end up eating all my garlic. I haven't even had a chance to try and preserve it. um, but I don't think you'd be able to plant it after it's been kept in vinegar. Could be wrong.
Hey, you could always try. It's that gray area, right?
That's right.
And then somebody said, what do I do after harvesting? Eat it. But I'm
Eat
sure
it.
the formal answer on like curing it, which you kind of just went over, digging it up, letting it cure and dry for a couple of weeks, and then getting rid of the dirt, braiding it at that point if it's soft neck. Any kind of
Uh-huh.
suggestions for the hard neck since it can't be braided as easily?
I will put them out to dry, like I said, under a tree is what I've done before, or in just a covered place that's out of the direct sun, good airflow, and I'll leave all that greenery on it until it's fully dried, and then I'll probably leave a good stalk on them, and I'll cut all that off, and that's compost. And I just make sure all the dirt's cleaned off of them, and that's really all I do. You're not going to braid them, of course, like you said, because they're a hard neck, but I kind of leave a little bit, kind of like that.
Oh, good. And then kind of going off of that, what is the storage length for soft and hard neck? I think we talked about this earlier. It just depends on the variety.
Depends on the variety, depends on your storage. Soft necks, probably anywhere from 6 months to a year, possibly, if you have the right conditions, humidity and temperature. Hard necks, it's going to be less, maybe 1 to 3 months, maybe.
So if you plant soft and hard neck, eat your hard neck right away. Store your soft neck.
Store your soft necks. And if you're going to preserve your hard necks in vinegar or dry them and make your own garlic powder, I have to try that.
I know. I feel like there's so many things to do with garlic. I really want to try the garlic powder too, because I feel like the stuff
Yeah.
you get at the store is just like, it's just powder. Like it doesn't
What
taste
is that?
like, I don't know. Another question, do nutrients deplete in raised bed soil each year, and do we need to supplement each year?
I would add more nutrients to your raised beds every year. I would, if you're putting in more compost every year just to help with the volume of it, but also you can add things like worm castings. Worm castings are great. You could add some cow manure, chicken manure, something to add more nutrients to it. You could supplement with different all-purpose fertilizers you could mix in there, but mostly I'm adding more compost, whether that's dairy cow manure compost, chicken compost, just some form of compost.
Get it in there. I know our raised beds, like I said, we've got those for a few reasons. We also have toddlers who are just like running around constantly, and the one, I grew a watermelon plant on the ground this year and he literally snapped it in half. He like walked all over it. It's fine, but this is why we grow in raised beds. But every year it does get depleted so much because all of the veggies that we grow, they just eat up those nutrients and take a lot. So definitely, yeah, you got to put some stuff back in there. But I think that's it for all the questions that have come in. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening to our Growing Garlic Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to send either of us a DM, or you can always go back to the Grow Organic website. Like I said earlier, they've got a whole wealth of resources there on growing garlic and so much more. So thank you again to everybody. Thank you so much, Mary, for hopping Q&A and answering all of our questions and being a resource for the tanning growers community. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.